She did, or Tony. Isn't Tony doing the presentation? I don't know. Philip Simpson is.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm in now.
Yeah. She's just an attendee. Okay, don't do that. Arthur was yeah, and she's with Public Works. But the other one is just an attendee.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Arturo.
Okay, so I have moved most to, sorry, we're still getting ready. To panelists.
No problem.
He's just, who's he? I think he's fine. I'm gonna close the door, is that okay? Yes.
Hey, Tony, do you have the presentation?
Yes, ma'am. I have two.
Okay, thank you.
Let me see. Hi there, we can still hear you. Yes, good. We're glad you're here. I thought Robert was in here. Is that Robert? Yes. Okay. Or Harrison? We have a quorum.
Do we have a quorum? I guess. How do you know if you have a quorum?
Okay,
We
Mr.
can see who's in the meeting.
Okay. I have to ask, has the list of the members changed at all? All the same people?
Do you have to move?
Okay, Mr. Chair, when you're ready.
Okay. Are we broadcasting on YouTube?
We don't broadcast on YouTube. It's just a webinar.
Oh, okay. It's different than last time then.
Yes.
Okay. All right, then in that case, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting on October 15th at 6:04 p.m. I'd like to go ahead and get started with introductions. My name is Stan Engel. I am the vice chair of the advisory board, currently filling in for Ms. Macarthur, the board chair, and I represent District 4. And then if we could go ahead and have the other board members introduce themselves. Let's start with Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Eric Montgomery. I am the District 5 representative for the Parks and Rec Board.
Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I'm Robert Harrison, representative for District 2.
Megan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I do apologize. My video is not working this evening, but Megan Schuler, District 6.
Ms. Zaylor.
District District Mesia, District 3.
Thank you.
Did you catch that?
Yeah. Okay, and then if we could have staff.
Good evening.
As recording secretary, office manager.
Good evening, Phil Katnack, Recreation Administrator.
Good evening, everybody. Tony Trevino, Public Works Interim Deputy Director.
Kathy Matthews, Landscape Architect with Parks and Recreation.
Administrator with the Public Works.
Good evening, this is Sri Devi, Architect with Public Works.
Good evening, David Cedillo, Interim Public Works Director.
Good evening, Robert Nunez, Youth Services Administrator.
Good evening, everybody. Franco Granillo, Parks Administrator.
Good evening. My name is Joy Ann Lucero. I'm the Management Analyst for Parks and Recreation.
Good evening, Sonia Delgado, Director, Parks and Recreation.
Hi, this is Ceci Vasconcelos. I'm with the Community Engagement Office.
Did we get everybody? Okay, if yes, then the members of the public.
Yeah, I am Phil Simpson. I'm with the Southern New Mexico Trails Alliance and a local resident.
Paul Doogie, Sutter Miller and Associates.
Arturo, you're on mute.
No wonder nobody could hear me. My name is Arturo Gonzalez, ECM International Program Manager assisting the City of Las Cruces.
Mike and Paul, do you want to introduce yourself?
Paul Doogie, Sutter Miller and Associates.
Mike Hurd with Highland Enterprises.
Thank you.
All right, I hope that was everybody. Moving on to conflict of interest. If anybody on the board or staff has any known conflicts of interest with any items on the agenda, please disclose them.
No conflicts of interest.
Okay, anybody else? Nobody? All right. Item 3, approval of agenda. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the agenda.
Chair, this is Eric. I'll second.
So we had a motion by Ms. Schuler and a second by Mr. Montgomery. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Did Ms. Saylor vote? I don't think I heard her. Ms. Saylor?
Yes.
Did you vote?
Say it again. Say it again.
I vote yes.
Okay. So the motion passes unanimously.
Sorry, we had you muted.
It's okay. Technology. All right. With the approval of the agenda, we move on to approval of the Parks and Rec Advisory Board special meeting minutes from August 4th, 2020. If you will give a minute or two to review those minutes real quickly.
Sometimes it's hard for me to hear what somebody's saying. So let me know if I have to go on something.
Okay, we'll do.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes as presented.
This is Robert. I second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Montgomery with a second by Mr. Harrison to approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Okay, to public participation. Item 5, we've received several emails, which I will read into the record. I see that Mr. Simpson is here, but I will go ahead and read his email into the record since the following emails references his email. Any other public participation for items on the agenda? We will wait until those agenda items are presented. So starting with Mr. Simpson's email. Good morning. Reviewing the agenda for tonight's Park and Recreation Advisory Board meeting. It says to send comments, concerns, questions to you. My apologies for not sending them 24 hours in advance. I just saw that request. Agenda item 5 is public participation. Here are my comments. I hope that my questions and concerns can be resolved by the Go Bond Trails and project update items. I think safety of the trail users is paramount. And to me, that means keeping us on the laterals as much as possible, off the streets rather than forcing us onto the streets and hoping that paint, signs, and other markings will protect us from distracted and drunk drivers. I attended the public meeting on trails in February and also the June 16th, 2020 BPAC meeting where the Go Bond Trails update was given. My biggest concern is the big deviation from the Armijo lateral between McClure Road and Hadley Avenue. The June 16th presentation, slide number 8, included an interim alignment which instead routed the trail along the existing streets and roads on McClure, 2nd Street, Parker Road, 4th Street, crossing Picacho at 4th Street, and then 4th Street to Hadley, where the trail would rejoin the original alignment. Number 1, north of Picacho, eBid plans to use the east side of the lateral for their maintenance, and the west side does not go through to Parker, but dead ends into railroad property. It was mentioned that a bridge could be built over the lateral just north of Parker to bring trail users to the east side. But then they would have to use Mesia Street, which has flooding and ponding issues. In my view, a trail that floods occasionally is far preferable to a trail always exposed to cars, trucks, and other traffic. And I would request that alignment rather than one along McClure and 2nd Streets. Another alternative, rather than Mesia Street, is to use the west side of the lateral from Parker to Picacho instead of Mesia Street, after crossing the lateral on a bridge as mentioned, and then crossing the railroad track along Parker Road. Number 2, my recommendation for crossing Picacho is to do so next to the railroad tracks, either just west of them along the lateral road or to their east at the intersection of Mesia Street. Currently, there is a median on Picacho just west of the railroad track, which was mentioned as a problem. I think rather than being a problem, the median serves a useful purpose as a safety island while crossing Picacho, and a curb cut could make it even more convenient. I realize getting approval for a high-speed crossing is not easy, but I think it is worthwhile to avoid trail users having to spend so much time on surface streets with motorized vehicles. This crossing would also serve the park there with labs, pool, tennis, and handball courts, restrooms, and other facilities. Number 3, it was also mentioned issues about excuse me. It was also mentioned issues about using the lateral bank between Picacho and Hadley, namely the space also needed for an official road, First Street. The problem was stated as not enough room to have 8-foot wide trail and a slope down to First Street and First Street itself. I would suggest the trail could share First Street as needed for that section, which is extremely low traffic since it does not go through to Picacho and has very few houses on it. I think safety of the trail users is paramount, and to me that means keeping us on the laterals as much as possible, off the streets, and doing it right the first time rather than forcing us onto streets and hoping that paint, signs, and other markings will protect us from distracted, drunk, and other drivers. Routing the trail near the park with its restrooms and other facilities improves access to the park for residents north of Picacho while providing facilities for trail users. I realize there are issues with the original alignment, but none of them, to me, seems worth forcing walkers and cyclists to join with street traffic for so long and to deviate so extensively from the plans that voters approved. In the interim, if the interim alignment remains along the surface streets, number 1, will an alignment off of surface streets be actively pursued? Number 2, will GO bond funding still be available in the future for items like a pedestrian bridge across the lateral and signs and signals as pedestrian street crossings like Picacho? Number 3, if an interim hawk signal is installed at 4th Street, can it be moved in the future to a Picacho crossing at the park? Thanks for your attention to this matter, Mr. Philip B. Simpson. Okay, now I'm going to read 2 follow-up emails. Okay. Bear with me, please. I am trying to find Ashley Curry's email. Bear with me. Here we go. Okay, second email. Dear City and Parks and Recreation staff, I appreciate Mr. Simpson's comments and I would like to second his opinion on this matter. Safe Routes to School is currently in the process of conducting walks audits to identify safe routes to each elementary school from multiple directions. I look at these GO bond multi-use projects through the lens of children who will be actively commuting to school. One of the reasons I've been such a fan of these projects is to create routes that students can safely bike with minimal concerns for conflicts with vehicular traffic. I too have concerns about the temporary routing that was presented at the June BPAC meeting. I would be much more comfortable with the route that Mr. Simpson outlined, staying on the laterals as much as possible and using Mesia Street or First Street as alternatives. This GO bond multi-use trail will provide safe access to 7 schools, as well as Lions Park, the Armijo lateral. This GO bond multi-use trail will provide safe access to 7 schools, as well as Lions Park. The Armijo lateral serves as a boundary for 3 LCPS elementary schools, including Macarthur to the west, Alameda to the northwest, and Central to the southwest. It will also provide access to Las Cruces Catholic School, Holy Cross, J. Paul Taylor, Mayfield High School, Alma de Arte High School. Please see the attached elementary school boundary maps for the Las Cruces Public Schools. Macarthur Elementary, you'll see the following, the lateral as much as possible crossing near the railroad tracks on the Concho. Students who attend Macarthur will be able to continue through neighborhood streets such as Van Patten, Brownlee to arrive at their school. Alameda Elementary, safe routes to school's current walking school bus meets at the corner of Miranda and Palmer. Having the trail along the Armijo lateral at this point will give access to students to commute along the multi-use trail. Rerouting via 2nd Street will eliminate this option. Central Elementary. Safe Routes to Schools has recently identified Lions Park Labs Pool as a starting point for a walking route. Access to this multi-use trail will extend the reach of students who will be able to actively walk to school. I would support a hawk signal as close to the lateral/railroad as standards allow. The acronym is MUTCD. I'm not sure, personally, I'm not sure what that is. I did have a conversation today with Mr. Love at NMDOT, and he's open to discussing this possibility with the city again. I believe you'd be in agreement that this is a desired route, and I would request that if we find solutions to the issues that may be presented, rather than creating a temporary route that would have to wait for potentially years to fix. Unfortunately, I have a conflict and won't be able to attend this evening's meeting, but I would be very happy to discuss further at any point. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Miss Ashley Curry. Okay, and then finally, one more from Mr. Bencomo. To the City of Las Cruces Parks and Recreation Advisory Board members. I am currently the pedestrian representative on the MPO Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and I echo the comments of Ms. Curry and Mr. Simpson in their emails below and would add the following. The planned reroute of the Armijo Lateral Trail down McClure is problematic due to the fact that there are no sidewalks on that long stretch of McClure between the lateral and 2nd Street. Additionally, there doesn't appear to be adequate right-of-way and definitely no funding for adding any in the near future. If safety is the issue, an argument can be made that having to use this roadway and others for extended distance as is currently planned is more dangerous to walkers and riders than crossing Picacho where the lateral accesses the roadway. Multi-use trails should be designed for the lowest skilled bike rider since by their very design, being off roadways makes them the safest to use. By forcing all riders onto the roadways, safety is definitely an issue. Looking into the future, we are hopeful that these bonds can be recycled in approximately 2 years to continue working on expanding multi-use trails throughout our community. By the trail along the Armijo Lateral running from the outflow channel trail to McClure and then seemingly coming to a dead end, we chance sending a very detrimental message to our community members, which could drive them to have legitimate questions such as, in quotation marks, is this what we had our taxes raised for, a trail that goes nowhere, in quotation marks. Since that's what it will actually do by dead ending at the roadway, incomplete trails that lack connectivity is not what was put forth in the GeoBond question voted on, and in my opinion will damage any hope of future recycling through general vote of future bonds. Thank you for your time and attention in this matter, Mr. Andrew Bencomo. Okay, so that's the emails that we received for public comment prior to the board meeting. If there's any other public comment not related to an agenda item by anybody, any member of the public, please go ahead and enter your statement. Okay, I see Mr. Francis is it Mr. or Miss Francis Escola has raised their hand?
I have allowed them to talk, but I think they will need to still unmute from their end.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I don't know, it sounds like you're talking about phase 1 and the portion of the Armijo lateral that gives me great concern for my safety. There's a lot of safety going on about bicyclists, but there's not a lot of discussion about safety from for the people who live along the ditch from the bicyclists. And I'm not really ready to address it at this point, but I don't want to miss out on an important opportunity. And actually, I've talked with Kathy Matthews, and maybe it's better for me to save what I have to say till we get closer to that portion of or that phase of the project. Does anybody have does Kathy have anything to say, or Ceci?
Mr. Chair, this is Kathy Matthews. I did speak with Ms. Escola the other day, and she and I have exchanged emails, and she has expressed her concern with regard to the idea of a trail along Armijo lateral that is adjacent to her property. That part of the Armijo lateral is south of Brown Road and north of Avenida de Mesia. That portion of the trail has been discussed by others, or excuse me, that portion of the lateral has been discussed by others as a potential location for trail facilities. At this point in time, it is not part of what is proposed for the Armijo lateral trail, but I feel that Ms. Escola's concerns could be heard today and could be valuable in providing all perspectives with regard to the trail. Ms. Escola, if you are interested in speaking this evening, I think it would be valuable. Of course, Mr. Chair, the final decision is to you. Thank you.
As I think this is going to be a pretty long meeting, we could always discuss this, as they say, offline. And I just realized Miss Escola is actually a neighbor that lives quite close to me. I didn't.
Oh, that's you, Stan. I didn't know you're Stan who walks in the dark. We greet each other in the neighborhood as I'm walking my dogs and you're taking your exercise. But, you know, I've never, you know, the only other time I saw you in daylight was at the co-op. So,
yeah,
hello.
We can discuss this offline.
Yes, that sounds great. Thank you, and yeah. I'm glad to wait. I would like to continue to hear these meetings because I've heard other people along different places of the trail who have comments about what's going on, and I want to hear the other side of the story. I think that's only being fair.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Escola. Any other public comments not related to the agenda items? Okay. Since it seems like there's no more public comments, for this section, let's go ahead and move on to action items. Item number 6, Go Bond Trails, Tony Trevino, Interim Deputy Director, Public Works.
Good afternoon, everyone. So if I could just get allowed to share my screen here, I will share the presentation. Again, as Mr. Engel mentioned, my name is Tony Trevino. I am the Interim Deputy Director of Public Works. And here we go. I have access. Can you guys see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Alrighty, so again, thank you everybody for having me present today. I am here to go over the again the 2018 Geo Bond election, question number 4, which was the walking, jogging, biking, and recreational trails. This is the same presentation that I did give to the BPAC committee, and you know, did I bring up? I apologize. I think I brought up the presentation from the BPAC meeting. Let's see here. Okay. I apologize, everybody. I have, no? Okay. I just didn't change the first slide. So let me start this over again. I got 2 presentations for you today, and I have 3 on the screen. So, okay, that's it. Okay, so here's the presentation. I do apologize. I forgot to change the date and the name. I thought I had it, but I guess I didn't save it on the bottom of this first slide, but that should say the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting for October 15th, 2020. The agenda today, just want to give us some background on the project, some of the thought and processes that the design team went into, as well as the Public Works team and Parks and Rec, of how we can get this project accomplished within our current budget and our current timeline, and working with the different entities that are involved with this project. I'll give you some project information and then allow for some questions from the committee at the end. Just a little background. Again, this Geo bonds were approved August 21st of 2018. Question number 4 was for the walking, jogging, and biking trails for $2.7 million. Some of the past meetings we had a public meeting on February 20th. We had an EBID meeting June 10th. What that meeting was for was to try and apply for the first leg of the Mesia drain trail and get the permit from EBID. To give you guys some background on our collaboration with EBID, it was a hard sell to get this trail, this alignment approved by EBID. Lots of concerns by the farmers, a lot of the residents that were there. We did have to cut it short a little bit, ending that Mesia drain trail at Burn Lake for the time being, due to some farmers at the further end near Mexico 28 that who are on the board of EBID, who do not want the trail behind their property on the drain behind their orchard and their plant. So we did squeak by. I was happy. I was ecstatic that we got the first permit. I know Kathy Matthews is working the second permit now, which is the Reho Trail, which is going to be another hard sell. Working with them, they tell us on what side of the drain to be on or the lateral to be on. We cannot depict if we want the west side of the bank or the east side, whatever fits us best. They give us the side that they will not be maintaining, and they can live without having that access to maintain the drains, which is usually not the best side of the drain or lateral for access. These are some of the areas that have fallen trees, erosion, holes, and some debris in there. So I know there's one of the comments brought up on the emails was to swap into the west side of the Armijo drain or the Armijo lateral. We could if we were allowed to, but EBID had restricted us to the east side. So in regards to that one comment from Mr. Simpson, I believe the reason why we cannot be on the west side is because EBID has directed us to be on the east side. Then again on BPAC, we met on June 16th. I presented them the same presentation. I think all went well. I went in depth over our interim detour routes and the reasoning why those were chosen for the interim time being, and that our future plans is to follow the main plan trails along the drains and laterals in the future when funding time and the collaboration with the proper entities, whether it be the railroad, NMDOT, EBID for a lot of these areas, because some of them are going to be some major permanent structures, major hawk systems, crossings, bridges going over drains or laterals, or possibly even over the railroad. So it's a major effort to do this. So I will get into that a little more in depth as we move forward. So this is the Mesia drain trail. This is what we just got permitted from EBID. Up here on the north side, we tie into the outfall channel just northwest of Mayfield High School and work our way south. Right here, there's an existing crosswalk right here with the island refuge that we're going to be utilizing on Bruins Lane. Coming back onto the drain, falling over here. And when we get to the Field of Dreams, the football stadium, we're going to have to do some modifications to the drain. We're going to have to bury some of that length of open with pipe because there's not enough access for us to build the trail and get a safe access across there. So we're going to do some improvements onto EBID property there. At that point, we're going to be kind of coming down here that existing dirt road that is just east of the fence that's kind of protecting and closing off the parking lot to the football stadium. The crossing on Tashiro, we currently do, Public Works has a project right now to reconstruct Tashiro from Valley Drive to Motel Boulevard. And we're lucky in the fact that I'm involved and the designers, the engineering team are involved in both projects. So we have some good collaboration with both design teams. We're going to have a crossing here with, I believe, a median refuge. We're going to have to relocate that a little bit just so we can have the proper alignment, but we will have a median refuge here for this crossing across Tashiro. That crossing will be built with the Tashiro project, and the trails will just tie into it outside of the right of way. And then the Mesia drain just keeps on heading south. Next slide here. So this is where we cross Picacho. I know this is another area of concern. I know Ms. Curry has spoken with Mr. Harold Love from NMDOT, and I had some conversations with him also. What I had put in for, well, I say I, but what Public Works had put in for was for 2 map grants. Those 2 map grants were for 2 hawk systems. The first hawk system was right here on the drain right here, just east of 17th Street. There was a serious concern from NMDOT on that. I still applied for the grant, hopefully I would get it, but from the engineering standpoint, a hawk system crosswalk this close to a major intersection of 17th Street and Picacho Avenue is going to be in conflict with the timing and so forth. You know, those hawk systems are just actuated by somebody pushing those buttons. So if that button's pushed, it'll affect the traffic signal on 17th Street and Picacho because it's so close. There'll be a major abrupt obstruction to it. And then does cycle off, it does take some time to get back to our normal cycle for our timed intelligent traffic system for all our timed traffic signals throughout the city. So Mr. Harold Love and the NMDOT had some concerns for the close proximity it was to this one. And unfortunately, we did not get the grant. So that was a major project over, the funding on that I think was about 200,000, I think, just to kind of incorporate the design and the crossing for that, maybe a little less. However, with the timing and not the approval from NMDOT at this point, we're going to utilize the existing crossing, the new crossing, that intersection of 17th and Picacho. Again, this is an interim route for now till we can get the proper crossing over here. And when I say interim, we're going to have signage on all these trails, all these detours we have over there, that these are interim temporary trail connection points. The intent of this, we need to get this GO bond constructed, designed, constructed, and open to the public within our 4-year plan. We have to be opened up by the end of year 2022. So looking forth as a team, any kind of time delays, that is going to be a major time delay if we're going to try and get in the STIP from NMDOT and how that can get in there. So we're still working on that. I'm still in discussion with NMDOT for that hawk system, but to keep this project moving, we're just going to utilize the existing bike routes, bike paths up to 17th Street. Moving down further south, it's pretty straightforward. We'll be on the west side of the drain till we get to Amador, which is the same situation over here. This is even closer to the intersection of Amador and 17th Street. So at this point in time, we're going to have that same thing where we'll direct with signage, wayfinding signage, how to get across and utilize that crossing, the signalized crossing at Amador and 17th. And of course, they'll come back and get on the Burn Lake Road, and they'll end right at the I-10 at this point. So that is what has been permitted for with EBID. We've got the permit, been paid, and we're working on the final design for that segment to hopefully get that construction started ASAP. Let me go to the next trail. Oh, this is the Mesia drain, the last segment of it that I was talking about. But with the permit from EBID, we had to stop it at Interstate 10. There are some major, I guess I can say objections from the EBID board with the farmers in this area, having pedestrians, bike riders directly behind their farm next to their plant. And unfortunately, he's a member of the board. He's a voting member of the board also. So that's a very tight-knit board who backs each other up on that. So it was kind of took a negotiation at this point to stop it here to at least get the trail built. And this will be a segment we can work on when we get everything else going. This can be one of the last segments that we'll work on and try and get that through EBID. Again, it's not out of the picture, but it wasn't going to be an easy sell and it wasn't going to get approved right away. So in order to not delay the project any further, we stopped at I-10 and we'll continue to work on this after we get the other ones permitted. So here's the Armijo lateral. This is one I know has a lot of questions. I'm sorry, this is the Las Cruces. It starts at the Armijo. This is pretty straightforward. It's gonna start at the Armijo, kind of southwest of the Three Crosses Avenue. It's gonna head east, cross Alameda Boulevard, and down here to Madrid. This is an area right here. It also has the same situation with at MDOT owning the North Main segment right here. And how we can get across to the opposite side without having to do some kind of hawk system here at the beginning of the trail where it intersects Main Street and the Interim. So we're going to utilize the bike lanes on Madrid. We'll create some bike lanes and then utilize a crossing, and then we'll already be on the east side and just jump on the trail right there. This is one where another hawk system will be needed to be installed and aligned up appropriately here. That trail will follow behind the Gallagher Pond and Willoughby Pond, back around behind the police station and tie into Spruce. Right here at Spruce, we're going to end it right here. Public Works is designing Campo Shear now. We're going through several different kind of iterations, design concepts of how we can fit pedestrians, bicyclists. There's that's part of the TID, the tax increment district. It's part of the downtown TID district where there's a lot of amenities that are being requested from them, benches and so forth. So we're trying to come up with some kind of design schematic to fit through that narrow road and how we can accommodate the extension of that Las Cruces lateral trail down to Campo. And from back down to Campo, let me go back a slide. We will pick it up in the downtown area and extend that in the next phase. So let's go to the Armijo trail where there's been several concerns. It does start at the outfall channel, which is kind of west of Doniana Road. It'll follow the eastern bank of the drain of the lateral all the way till we get to McClure. I know here at McClure, the reason why we're having to divert here, I know this is the main part of everybody's concern. I'm going to skip ahead to a slide for you all first to kind of show you. As you extend further down on the Armijo lateral, we get to a point here where the lateral ties into Parker. As you can see here, the lateral is right here, the railroad tracks, and then Parker. EBID right-of-way ends way over here, a couple 100 feet north of Parker. So there is no direct access from EBID property onto Parker Road. You would have to cross BNSF. That is the lengthy process. We're on a 2-year process just to get some signals timing on a crossing on Avenida de Mesia and South Main. It's a 2-year process just to get some signal improvements near one of their crossings. So that is a reason why I know Mesia Street would have been one of the better options that we would have liked to have done. However, we have this area here of BNSF property that we just do not have the time and budget and do some kind of bridge or aerial crossing over their property. We can't jump on the west side. The west side that was mentioned here is what EBID wants to maintain that lateral. So that is what's causing us, let me go back a slide, to jump to McClure. We do know it's narrow. We're going to do some improvements on McClure as it crosses down from there, another little sidewalk. We're going to do some striping, share the roads. So at this point, what the city has, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you are aware of, is the active transportation plan. A plan was created to kind of create a bunch of bike routes, pedestrian routes throughout the city. 2nd Street is called out on that plan as a shared bike route. Is it let me just check here. I got it up. It's a bike path, just bike lanes. 2nd Street is just calling out for bike lanes as part of the active transportation plan. So we're going to be able to meet our active transportation plan by following 2nd Street. We get to Parker. So that is the reason for this big diversion here. And again, this is an interim child connection. We are working hopefully with the next phase of the GeoBonds. If I can get this done, if staff can get this done on time, within budget, and get these projects done, we'll have a great shot to go for phase 2 of these GeoBonds, which I know there's several projects that we started, the East Mesa Sports Complex. We're hoping for a phase 2 on that one. The phase 2 for these trails to get these completed also. We're going for those, and we're going to be pushing for those for our phase 2. I know there was a question regarding, is the city planning for any future improvements to kind of get these back to the original alignment on the lateral? That is our goal, move these detours back on the laterals as designed and planned from the future. So that is our end goal. We are not going to venture off that. So the trail will come down to Parker, and once you get to 2nd Street, this is an area that I spoke to with Mr. Harold Love again of NMDOT. Okay, let me go back slide. Sorry guys, I'm button happy. So this is the other area that I spoke to with NMDOT. Mesia Street, anything there to cross, it is too close to that railroad traffic signal, which is even a little more difficult to get approved when you're that close on a NMDOT roadway, when you have crossing arms for a railroad. So his recommendation was to go further away onto 4th Street. 4th Street is we already have the safe routes to school. We already have a crosswalk there, a major crosswalk for all the students going to Macarthur Elementary. And this was an ability for us to kind of utilize that and not have 2 different crosswalks, which NMDOT wasn't too fond of, a crosswalk on 4th Street and then one on 2nd Street, just a block away, 2 blocks away. So after discussing with him, he was preferring to have a hawk system on 4th Street. So this was the other one that I applied for a MAP grant from NMDOT, which unfortunately we were denied, but that is still in our plans to kind of get that moving forward, because it is a major crossing for the students walking to the school also. Okay, I already went over that. So here is the southern leg of the Army Hill lateral. As we cross Picacho, we're going to come north, get Hadley. 4th Street will allow us to kind of be right here, right in front of Macarthur, which when we had one of the public meetings, I don't know who was there. I don't know how many of who's present today was there, but there was a lot of comment regarding the alignment kind of following through here for some of the elements that are in this area to kind of get through also. So that was brought up by some of the public. So there was a couple comments regarding that, kind of going here through Hadley to meet some of these establishments here. But however, our main goal is to get back on the lateral. The other one that was brought up was 1st Street here. why can't we use the west side of the lateral in First Street? First Street is a very narrow road. It's got utilities on there, and part of the right of way actually goes onto the levee, the west bank of that lateral. So it is a very narrow roadway. We're putting utilities in there now. We don't have enough room for curb and gutter or any separation. I think we only have 10-foot lanes there with the current improvements and the amount of area that we have to work with there. So to kind of create another additional bike lane there, that is real narrow. And then we also have the EBID requirement on that side, which they want us to be on the west side, the east side, not the west side. To get back to the alignment, we'll tie back here on Hadley's where we'll tie into the original proposed trail and follow the Armijo lateral. We were able to do some negotiation here with EBID because they wanted us on the east side of the lateral, but we talked to them. I think Kathy had a lot to do with this. Because all the future development that's going to be over here, we have the Brannigan Ballpark, and this is what they call the not Apodaca Blueprint. There's Amador Proximo.
Yes.
Thank you. This is the Amador Proximo. This is a planned area from the city that they're going to move forward with some kind of development here and a theme development to kind of keep the same culture there. So we asked them and they allowed us to move it to the west side here. So that was a big plus. And I know here, the original alignment was to kind of come across Amador and down behind Cleaches and to the drain. The issues here was these park crossings, these right here, we would have needed one here. I know there's one that's brought up here in front of the Community of Hope, but then that'll make us have traffic go. I know we do it in shorter distances, but bicycle traffic will be going against traffic. If they come here and they want to get to the south end, they'll be going against traffic in the bike lane. There's only a bike lane there. If we had trails off to the side, it would be different, but they'd be in the bike lane. So the expense of that hawk system there and the proximity to this intersection, and they just rebuilt Valley Drive, and this would be a major construction because at this point, this is a street right here. This is a city street. Actually, it's dirt, but there's actually a city street there. Crossing here, and there's also access needed to come down the lateral here. So there's 3 intersections here, and the El Molino drain. So those 3 intersect at a point where we need to cross Valley Drive. This is not going to be an easy crossing. This is a long ways to go. There's going to have to be some kind of design.
Long ways to go.
Yes, ma'am. Some kind of island on the west side to accommodate all these appropriately. A city street, the El Molino drain, and also the Armijo lateral to the south, which is going to be quite pricey as you looked at it further. That is the ideal, and that is where we would want to be in the future, what we're going to be pushing for, and that also puts you right by Caliche, so that's going to be a great plus right there. In the interim, unfortunately, we're going to have to come down Amador and utilize the existing signalized crossing on Valley Drive and follow the existing bike trails on either the south side or either the eastbound or the westbound lanes. At this crossing, you can access either eastbound and westbound bike lanes and get to our Burn Lake Road. And at that point, you'll tie into your Mesia drain. Hope I didn't talk too much on that one, but I was hoping to answer most of the questions on that round that were being asked. So this is just a cross section here, what's going on. It is going to be an asphalt trail. This is kind of a cross section of the levee, generic kind of sample one, and the 8-foot asphalt trail on top. In some areas, we'll have to have some concrete based on the width of the bank that's there. And some areas where EBID is going to ask us to put concrete because they're going to have some maintenance vehicles go to check some certain gates in that area. So we're going to have concrete in some areas to make sure that it's structurally sound, so it's not broken up when we get these huge maintenance vehicles or a loader or some kind of backhoe that needs to get and access that side, that we are protected there. So EBID has been working with us on that to kind of name these different locations. This is just kind of, I got this from the design engineer today to kind of show on Hoagland and the Armijo lateral of what we're going to be doing. This is going to be kind of a, in the interim, before we can get our whole hawk system, this is going to be kind of a typical, I know this is the first time we've seen it. There might be some comments with the staggering of some crosswalks here, but we'll have signage. I know we're going to do some kind of cool Parks and Rec emblem here. Zippy or Ziggy, the turtle. We're going to have some pictures of him throughout the trail. We'll have stop signs for the bicyclists before they enter the roadway, bollards, and signage, the crosswalk sign, advanced warning signs, and wayfinding signs of where the next leg is, though. So this is just kind of like a typical one. This is going to be more refined for each intersection, but this is similar to what we're going to be doing and what we're planning for now. Next steps, the EBID permits. We have one obtained. So we're 33.33% done with EBID permits. Armijo drain permit or Armijo lateral permit has been submitted. And hopefully it'll be going soon. And maybe Kathy in a while can fill us in when that's going to be going through. And then the Las Cruces lateral. What's going to be the big thing on there is showing them any kind of usable farm area along these drains and laterals, what's being utilized now. And the big main focus here is showing them that there's not much in here, and the areas that are being farmed, that we're going to accommodate them somehow. If we're going to put fences there now, they want fences, they want security, nobody's going to be getting into their crops, picking them. I know one of the farmers had complained that they were picking one of their crops and people are just using the porta potties out there from the child for the workers. And, you know, they want that separation also from the farmers to the public also. So they want to make sure there's that break so there's no liability of them getting off the trail and utilizing the facilities or anything else on their private property that they're working on. Another one of their concerns is when they use their pesticides, insecticides, or their fertilizers. A lot of those are crop dusted or sprayed by big machinery that just go along the edges and spray their fertilizer and insecticides. Just spray them. The huge truck just spray them to the trees, into the canopy, and that stuff goes everywhere. Is there going to be an issue with people walking on the trail adjacent to them and getting the fertilizer on them? So we're going to be working with them and making some kind of signs that fertilizers or this kind of chemical is being used along this segment. That was one of their concerns also, that they're really concerned about, is them being responsible for spraying their fertilizer and insecticides and getting somebody walking on the trail. They brought up some good points. So here today, we're here for the Parks and Rec Advisory Board approval. At that point, the next step would get an amendment to the design build contract for the contractor to start building the project. Then before that, we got to get city council approval again, and then we can begin construction. So we're here now. There's still 3 major steps to get to before we can start construction. So we're pushing this hard and fast with our current design. We put a lot of thought and effort into this and got the best route, safe route as possible to make the intent of these trails, these alignments, as close as possible with the budget and the time that was allowed to us. And we got a great team working and we're pushing forward. So with that, I will open up to questions. And I hope within my presentation, I answered most of those questions that came up on the emails you read earlier. And then after this one, I have another presentation that was requested for the status of all our geobond questions for the parks. And on that one, I have some percentages of where we're done for a lot of these trails and all the other projects. So I will get to the percentage that we're done on these shortly.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Trevino. If we could go ahead and have questions from the board, and then we could have the public comments afterwards for this particular agenda item. So any questions from the board? Eric? No? Oh, Mr. Harrison?
Sorry, I might have can't see which screen it's on. But no, thank you for the presentation, Mr. Trevino. In the aspect of some of the stuff that Ashley Curry brought up and some of the funding that I guess the NMDOT grant wasn't approved, in the aspect of the safe routes to school, are there other possibilities to get funding for different parts of the project that are near the school, and there goes through multiple different schools? And I know the safe routes to schools, I don't know, a decade or so ago, and I remember looking at them, different routes, and that might be a different route for funding. Have you guys thought of that or looked into that? I don't know if it has to be through the school or through LCPS, but that is another option to help with some of the funding for the different crossing options.
Mr. Harrison, no, I have not had that conversation per se with Ms. Curry. However, we're open for any kind of grants. I'm going to apply for the MAP grant again this coming cycle. Maybe having the shells designed a little further will give us a little more leverage on getting them approved. But the good thing is these interim shell connections, they're on existing streets. Like I said, they're part of that active transportation plan. So all those are, we're going to just do some signage and striping. So that effort is not going to go to waste. That effort is not going to be done now and we're not going to utilize it later. That area by 2nd Street, 4th Street is it's been an identified route from our active transportation plan, which we're going to have to do in the future. So with that point, any funding that we get, we'll be able to just tie into this and keep going and push forward as far as possible along that drain or lateral. So yes, I will be up, and I think Kathy has been involved in a lot of grants for additional trails throughout the city, and we'll look. I'm pretty sure she's looking forward for the next phase and how to get this done, and also utilize a phase 2. So we will reach out to Ms. Curry. We have our quarterly LCPS and City of Las Cruces coordination meeting with the schools, and they're there quite often. So these routes were discussed with some of the boards, some of the directors there, and they approved of the alignment. They liked the alignment, and so we'll have some more conversations with Ms. Curry and see how we can find some options.
Okay, and then the aspect of it, I think with staying in on the laterals, as Mr. Simpson talked about, and then also coordinating with going ahead with what we have planned, but can we also keep in the works of working with the BNSF, or is it the railroad right there, to try to maneuver something to stay more on the trails? Is it more EBID or is it more BSNF, or a little bit of both, on depending where we are on the trail?
It's a little bit of both. BNSF has a longer lead time and a lot more restrictions, but we have been in contact with them on other areas of some trails that are crossing the railroad tracks, the outfall channel that crosses. We've been in communication with them, trying to find some remedies on how to address some of these areas. And so this is the similar topic we're talking throughout the city. This isn't going to be the only one. With a lot of these trails are designed in the future, this is going to occur several times throughout the city. So we need to find some way to accommodate that now. So there's a plan in the future when these projects are put forth. There's actually a budget that's been put together accordingly to address these items that are right now unforeseen, that we're trying to swim our way through them and figure out an answer. But once we get these squared away, we'll have an answer for the future for the rest of the trails.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Trevino. So I know Mr. Simpson mentioned using 1st Street north of Hadley, I believe. And you had mentioned that it was just too narrow, but to add a bike lane. But you know, would there be any kind of possibility of putting sharrows or signage there to say that it's a bicycle corridor as well, and we could use 1st Street? Also, just looking at the aerial imagery here on the internet, on Google Maps, there's a lot of alleys. Were the alleys ever considered as part of this? Why not?
Alleys were never brought up to this. There's several plans in the city that we got to try and incorporate into all the projects now. Active transportation plan had called out for the second and fourth to be part of that. They're paved roads, able to save in an effort to make our budget go further to do additional work on the trails. If we follow these brand new roads, 4th Street's a brand new road, and just do some striping on there, it's going to go a lot further than us having to go there and try and build something along the alleyway. The alleyways get a lot of traffic. These alleyways have all the sewer mains, all past the electric, a lot of the overhead power poles. So there's a lot of heavy equipment going through here from the utility companies. So, and when they park there, they pretty much block up the alleyway. So they won't be clear at all times when they got to go and maintain these and whenever there is. So, and once you get in there, there's no way around it to kind of go back around. I know the First Street thing, but the item here, I cannot get a crossing near this BNSF at this point right now. We would have to come all the way up from 4th Street, cross, and use that one the eastbound lane, bike lane that's there, if it's there, I think it is, and then get to it here. And then construct something here that's very narrow, especially right here. I want to share a screen with you guys. Do you guys mind?
No, go ahead.
Also, Mr. Cedillo has his hand up.
Yeah, if Mr. Trevino could go ahead and finish, and then we could move on.
Okay.
To
Can you see this aerial that I have up now?
Yes.
Okay, so here's Picacho, here's the drain, the Armijo lateral, and look at this. And I know this pretty closely because we just went and surveyed 1st Street to do some utilities and some paving in there. But we don't have more than 2 feet from the property line here to actually EBID drain. So there is no width here for anything to kind of even drive through here or put a path here. This is a choking point for that whole area. We would have to go and do some modifications to the throat of this culvert and maybe do some modifications here because I think it's about 3-4 feet only max from here to the fence line. And is our choking point there. And it does get wider as you go over here to the south, but there's not much of a levee here. And if you can see I can't do it right now, but there's only about 18 feet of paved roadway there that will have to be paved. Right now, it's just broken up asphalt, millings, that would have to be redone with the utilities there. So that is the reason what was one of the hiccups, because we did look at that. And again, our intent was to stay on the mains and the laterals and drains, but those little obstacles like that has put a hindrance on the project. So let me stop sharing this.
Okay, if you're done, Mr. Trevino, if we could have Mr. Cedillo ask a question or make a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And I was just going to add to the question that Board Member Harrison brought up, is if we had any discussions with Ashley Curry to see if we can coordinate our efforts on funding as part of the Safe Routes to Schools. And as Mr. Trevino mentioned, yes, that is something that we can discuss with them. But what I did want to touch base on is the fact that she did mention that she spoke with Mr. Harold Love from NMDOT. We have already had our conversations with him, but if all 3 of us can sit down and have that discussion, that will help us move towards that permanent location to where we can have a hawk signal on Picacho and possibly down over by 17th. So he said in her email that he let her know that he was open to reviewing those again. We could definitely use those partnerships to move forward with our permanent locations. So as we work through there, yes, we want to utilize everything that we can to make sure that we make these trails as whole as possible. Although that does take some time, it's understood. What we're doing right now is trying to align with the best path possible with the time frame and funding that we have at this time. So as Mr. Trevino said, we are actively working to get to those permanent paths that we have shown. Now, it will take some time, but we are actively working on those. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo. Okay, if there's no more questions from the board, then we'd like to go ahead and take comments and questions from members of the public who are in attendance.
Yeah, I did have one question at least for Mr. Trevino. It was mentioned that the Second Street is part of the active transportation plan. I guess my biggest concern with the surface streets would be McClure.
Excuse me, Mr. Simpson, can you state your name for the record, please?
I'm sorry, this is Phil Simpson.
Thank
Okay,
you.
go ahead, Mr. Simpson.
Did you want me to repeat that?
No.
No, you're good.
So if I understood correctly, you had just commented that you're worried about the condition of the surface.
Well, McClure Street, I don't see that as a very good solution for bicycles and pedestrians, being that I don't think there's a lot of room to widen it or really make that safe for non-motorized users.
Mr. Simpson, you are correct. That is probably not one of the better roads on this project. However, that is one of our connection points to get across.
Mr. Trevino, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Let me get closer. No, you're exactly right. McClure isn't in the best condition. But at this point, this is our only way to get across the rail tracks at a already identified crossing. Get across the lateral and onto the west side. We are looking with our design team of what kind of improvements we can do to McClure. Do we got to add a sidewalk there? Do we got to add a little bit to it? That is what we have. That is the main reason why we have this as a design build, because we have a contractor on board who is working with an engineer to come up with these solutions in the best way and kind of jump on the fly. Okay, this is not working. Let's look at this and let's see what improvements we can do on McClure second or fourth to make these accommodations, to make this work. But yes, we are looking at that. I don't have that answer now what we're going to do there, but once we do, we can share with Parks and Rec and kind of have that presented and shared on our website possibly. Right, you see me looking different ways because my screen's right here, my computer's over here, so I hope that answers your question.
So we do have a raised hand from Francis Escola.
Ms. Escola, go ahead.
Thank you. It doesn't look like where you are now, homes are as close to the ditch banks as they are where I live. But it sounds like there's proposed 8-foot paving, and where the Armijo lateral goes between Brown Road and Avenida de Mesia, it is so narrow and the homes come right up to the ditch bank that if there was 8 feet of paving put on that, these homes are older and people like me, I'm carrying the torch for the people who started it long ago, but there is a lot of stuff growing right along the ditch bank from our yards, and 8 feet of pavement, including, and plus with some concrete, can do damage to the plant material from people's yards and to the roots of the plants going underneath. Some of this stuff's been growing for 50 years. And if you cover it with pavement and cement, you are going to do damage to people's plant material. And in order to keep things going, people will have to use more water to offset the heat. And I'm wondering if the well-being of plants and humans who live along the way is being taken into consideration what I heard about the concerns of the farmers a little while ago was, well, you're going to hold off for now, even though they really don't like it, but you're still planning on going ahead. You want to do it, no matter how they feel about it. And I'm wondering how much respect is given to the concerns of the people who will have to live here, live with your decisions. And I just need to hear that because I haven't heard it at all in this meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Cole. This is Tony again. No, to kind of go to your first question on the 8-foot width of the trail.
8 foot of the pavement, I'm sorry.
Right. But that is just a typical section. Like I said, we didn't get the best side of the drain or laterals throughout. We're having to narrow down to 5 or 4. We surveyed all these drains and trails to see what we can do the best. So that is not going to be 8 foot all the way through, and we will take into account vegetation, slopes into people's properties and so forth. In regards to your comment about the farmer there, it's not that we're adamant about going for it, but I have to do my due diligence for the public who have voted these trail alignments to move forward, to try and get these alignments completed and done as planned and has programmed for the entire city. So whether it works out or not, but I do have to try my best, and we have to put forth our best effort to get these alignments completed.
May I offer a comment?
Sure.
I think I've talked with you before about this very same concern. I have numerous concerns about this lateral, and you assured me that it was not part of any trail plan, and it is.
Right. I think when we talked about it wasn't part of this plan, that the Geobond project does not go that far south.
But it is on future phases, is my understanding.
Yes, it may be.
And
Kathy.
I would really like, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. I really would like consideration given for the well-being of the people who live that close to the ditch. Because so what if it's paved and lit? That means there's going to be lights in our bedrooms. It's that close. And right now, EBID has locked all 4 gates on those streets, and bicyclists are actually, and there's at least 10 no trespassing signs in there, and bicyclists are getting off their bicycles, pushing their bikes under the gates, and getting back on their bikes. And the other evening, for example, I was cooking out on my back porch on a little chair with a little, fancy little, whatever, pressure cooker thing that you can fry things in. And some bicyclists came by and they dusted my supper. And it's like, I really am serious. I will not continue to live here if this trail goes through. There is just, it's too close. And to have people coming and going where you should be able to be in your backyard safely and have some peace and quiet and feeling of privacy. It's not safe, and we'll talk about it more, but I just wanted to address this so that maybe people can be thinking about the humans who have to live and the plants who have to live with these decisions that you're making. And give wiggle room for where things can be moved so that people can be respected. That's all. And I thank you for hearing me out.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. That was great. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mrs. Gold. And of course, you see me around the neighborhood. You can talk to me about this, and I can bring any issues that you have to later board meetings or to just the staff in general. Prior to the public comment, I didn't put a time limit on anybody. So in the spirit of fairness, I will continue with no time limit on the comments. But I do see that Mr. George Pearson has his his hand up, and then I see our board member, Mr. Harrison, also has his hand up. So if we could go ahead and have Mr. Pearson give his comment, and then we'll get to our board member.
Thank you. I'm George Pearson. I'm chair of the BPAC, but also tonight just a citizen. One of the things that we're all concerned about at the BPAC in particular is safety. And so the safety of where these road crossings happen is a primary concern. We're designing a multi-use trail system. A multi-use trail should be usable, we say, from 8 to 80, so that it can be used by everybody else. What I would like to hear some assurances from, I guess, from city is at some point, we're not going to have a multi-use trail. We're going to have to transition to a bike trail or shared use or something. So if those transitions are properly marked and properly indicated that it's not appropriate, that you're no longer on a trail, essentially, you're on a different type of facility. I think that's what my concern is, until the point when hopefully at some point we have the true trail system throughout the entire system. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Trevino, you don't have anything to add to that?
No.
In his comments?
No, sir. I'm not on mute, right? No, I heard Mr. Pearson. I agree with him. That is our job as engineers, to make sure we do have these crossings safely done, safely marked. We're going to have the proper signage. And no, he's right. We're going to go from a multi-use trail to a bike boulevard, to shared bike lanes to meet the ATP. But we're going to follow these just to do a chalk connection in the interim to get that full multi-use path trail. So he's exactly right. And we're going to do the best we can to make this safe and do it properly.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Harrison. Oh, you're muted. Can't hear you.
My wife says I'm better that way if I'm muted. Sorry, bad joke. So just piggybacking off Ms. Escola and then also Mr. Pearson, and the aspect of, and I know I'm in District 2 and I listened to Mr. Cedillo's presentation, and we're talking about the Conway canopy, and then kind of he kept saying phase 1 and removing trees, and wondering, okay, well, removing trees and talking, and he did great listening to all the neighborhood concerns. Did you all do that with the aspect of the McClure transition and kind of whoever's the city council for that district, and having neighbors input on things? Because I know similar but same in the aspect, and Cedillo did a great job, and Councilwoman Stuvey and getting input and stuff. Was that done with the McClure residents?
I did the first public meeting that we sent out. We sent out a invites to the meeting to, I believe we had Ceci. I think it was 200 feet or 300 feet adjacent to the drains and laterals that we sent out these invites to. So we have reached out. We made the contact to them to get them involved in this process, and that is through the entire length of all the trails going through. So we did reach out to everybody along these laterals and drains.
Okay. And then the other one is that kind of, when we were going through, I think, I don't know, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, with the peak performance system and stuff, and the aspect of how one of the consultants came and looked at things. And one of the aspects, we think trails, we just think, okay, biking, walking, whatever, but another good visualization or interpretation of all these trails, and thinking of the safety and multi-use, but really these trails are just linear parks. And I think that was a good kind of little play on words that I recall and kept to memory, that the linear parks, we have to treat them just as if we would in the safety of any of the play parks, ball fields, soccer fields, anything in that nature. But it's still a linear park, and we need the safety of it, being if it's the crosswalks, being if it's the route or anything in that nature. So yes, not only for bicyclists, but also older population that have to be safe and they're not going to walk down the street and fall. So.
No, Mr. Harrison, I think you hit the nail on the head there, because these aren't just a walking path trail. These are linear parks, which is kind of gets to a point where I think the city and as a public group is when these trails are identified, aligned, that there's some previous research of what's going to be the obstructions here, BNSF. Is EBID couldn't even allow us here, because that's a hard sell to begin with, EBID. So I think kind of our biggest obstacle is the trails are drawn up there, but nobody had done the outreach and discussions to all these entities that we're trying to deal with. So I think having said it's a linear park, there's a lot more to it than just a trail. You're exactly right. So there's need a lot more collaboration on these trails alignments. We're going to be going through EBID crossing here. A lot of preparation and coordination should be done in the planning phase when these are actually lined out for phases to be built. So what's shown to the public, what actually can be built, and when you go try and do it, is mirroring each other. It's not having to venture off and make it work like we're having to struggle now and make a connection now, because we have these issues where some of this coordination, it's just starting. It has to be done, and we're starting to do that conversation now. But I think that makes sense what you just said.
Okay. Thank you. I'm good.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So this is an action item. This is an action item to approve the presentation to be presented in front of City Council. Am I correct?
Correct. Once we get Parks and Rec approval, we will commence to getting the design amendments and permits from EBID and the contractor, and then go to City Council and begin construction.
Okay, so do we have a motion from the board to approve this presentation or to approve going forward with this process in the design of the trails? Is there?
Mr. Chairman, this is Megan. I move that we accept Mr. Trevino's presentation to move on to City Council.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Marilyn Taylor.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, this is just an advisory point to Mr. Trevino, and coming from off of Mrs. I'm gonna mispronounce your name, Escola's name. I would caution you on how you depict El Paso or EBID in your presentation. Just a word of caution. Those farmers and ranchers will block a lot more possibly in that presentation on how you present your presentation in the manner that you spoke about it tonight. So just some offering of advice to you on how you approach EBID in that presentation.
Yes, thank you. We already approached them one time and have that presentation done. So thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion before we vote from any other board members? Ms. Saylor? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Montgomery.
That's all right. I'll yield to Ms. Zayler if she has a comment.
No.
No.
Well, the only question I guess I have, Mr. Chair, is to make sure that to ask that the presentation also start to include, and I don't know if this would be some expertise that Ms. Matthews would be able to provide relative to some of the comments on the paving and the vegetation that may be affected that was discussed by Ms. Escola. if that could be addressed during the presentation to City Council, I think that would be a benefit. I will say that I appreciated staff's consideration of the routing, especially as it is concerned with the linkages of the EBID flow channels relative to the BNSF right away in the lines. I appreciate the consideration that was given into that, and also appreciated the explanations in the presentation. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Montgomery. I'll go ahead with my comment before we vote. As an avid cyclist myself and an avid walker, I am forced to begrudgingly agree with Mr. Trevino's analysis of the issues involved with the engineering issues involved with getting our crossings, plus the fact that in some instances the crossings, the money for the crossings didn't materialize when submitting for grants. So I would love to have seen crossings that favor walkers and cyclists, because I believe that we have neglected walking and bicycling as a viable transportation system in favor of single occupancy vehicles for far too long. However, the project needs to be done. Otherwise, we may not get anything else out of it. So I think that Mr. Trevino did a good job in showcasing the difficulties involved with trying to build a transportation system that could benefit those users. So with that being said, if we could go ahead and have a vote to move this to council. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Ms. Saylor?
Aye. Marilyn Saylor.
Aye. So the motion to have Mr. Trevino's presentation taken forward to City Council is approved unanimously. Okay. So now that we're done with the action items, I would ask the board if they are willing to go ahead and entertain the discussion items 7.1, 2, and 3, or if any members of the board would like to make a motion to table those discussion items for a later date.
Mr. Chair, if you're going to table it, you have to decide on a date and a time that you're going to discuss those items.
Thank you.
Robert's rules.
Thank you, Ms. Saylor. Sonia, when is the next Parks and Rec scheduled, board meeting scheduled?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Sonia Delgado, Director of Parks and Recreation. It'll be the third Thursday in November, so that would be, what is it?
The 19th?
The 19th, yes.
Okay. So would anybody on the board wish to make a motion to table any of the discussion, any or all of the discussion items to the next Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting on November 19th, 2020?
Mr. Chair,
I so move that it be accepted that we discuss those items next month, whenever the meeting is.
Did Miss, it was hard to hear. Did she say she makes a motion to
Dismiss
table?
until the next November 19th meeting.
Okay,
Yes.
so she did.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question for clarification purposes. If we do table those, we did receive the budget item information earlier today. Sonia, would you be able to elaborate? Is that an item that is time precedent to discuss this evening, or that can wait until the November meeting?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Sonia Delgado, Director of Parks and Recreation. That was just informational purposes. That is just the budget for the entire department. We just wanted to share that with you. It is not time sensitive. We can go over it in November.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Delgado.
Mr. Chair, Sonia, I have another question for you. Are we aware what we're looking at as far as an agenda for next month, and what we may need to discuss then, in interest of moving 3 items for discussion?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Sonia Delgado, Director of Parks and Rec. At this point in time, no, we may have an item that'll come forward for Parks and Recreation related to the GO bond, but I'm not entirely sure. But I don't have any other items other than these 3. And they should go relatively quickly, but we can bring them back, and they're not time sensitive. It was more informational.
Thank you, Ms. Delgado. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Any other discussion before we vote to table discussion items 7.1, 2, and 3 for the next Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting? Okay. Let's go ahead and vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Ayler? You vote?
Aye, Marilyn Saylor.
I'm going to vote nay. I wouldn't have minded getting through them tonight, but it is a majority rule. So the motion to table discussion items 7.1, 7.2, and 7.3 until the next Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting on November 19th, 2020 has passed. Okay, well that gets through all action and discussion items. If we could go ahead and move on to staff member comments. Any staff members have comments they'd like to make?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Sonia Delgado, Director of Parks and Recreation, none at this time.
Anybody else? Okay, if there's nobody else for staff member comments, let's go ahead and move on to agenda item number 9, board member comments. Let's go ahead and start with Eric, Mr. Montgomery.
Sorry, I turned on the camera to say no.
Oh, okay. Mr. Harrison, any comments?
No, just thank you to Mr. Trevino and putting that up. And I know it's hard getting all those things together, just how we've been saying, but in the aspect to the BPAC and all the other trails and biking communities and taking their recommendations to heart and seeing as best we can to do the routes and things that we want to. And I feel you're doing that. And then also wanted to just also thank Mr. Cedillo. He did a good hosting of a District 2 meeting this week, and I appreciate that. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Ms. Schuler, do you have any comments?
No comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Saylor?
Any comments?
Yes, I do. I just want to thank the board for being so patient with me. I really hate being home all the time, but this is a method of getting me back to the board. And I want the board members all to know the issue of the dog for the Veterans Park is not a dead issue. We're still gonna work on that. And as soon as I can meet with our director, we're gonna have a meeting on it. So I'm still hoping that that will be a goal for our board. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Saylor. My comments. It's good to have you. It's good to have you back, and I'm glad that you're still moving forward with issues that are important to you and to the city and to Parks and Rec. And I would also like, again, just to offer my general thanks to Parks and Rec and the staff and the board for dealing with these interesting times. And that's it. And with that being said, is there a motion for anything? A motion to adjourn?
Chair, a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Motion by Mr. Montgomery, second by Mr. Harrison. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All right. Well, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Was that everybody, Ms. Schuler?
Sorry, I didn't know if you heard me.
Okay. Sounds like that was everybody. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. We'll see you next time around.
Okay, time is 43.
Yes, 7:43 adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, thank you. And we're done. We can hang up.
Yeah, I had to go into the kitchen and hook it